if we just take PTSD from the stereotypical approach and we park that off to the side, right? But, as veterans, our circadian rhythm is totally jacked. And if you smoked cigarettes for a long time, if you drank a lot of coffee, and if you took vitamin Motrin all the time, right?
Yeah.
So now your liver is going to be jacked up, your kidney is going to be jacked up. You're going to have chemical dependencies from nicotine and all that, and from the caffeine. And
Work to go and earn my pay. Work, work, boots on and lace them up.
All right. Carnivore Soldier coming at you from Austin, Texas. Today we've got our fourth Mission Carnivore video and podcast with Scott Price from the U.S. Air Force. Let me bring him in here.
hey,
How you doing, Scott?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you doing today, Larry?
I'm doing great, man. It's great to have you on board. I just want you to go ahead and feel comfortable. We're going to talk about your service, and then we're going to jump into some carnivore stuff. So why don't you go ahead and tell me a little about yourself, where you're from, what your service is like, that kind of stuff.
Okay, well, it starts out pretty simple. I'm the third son of an Army veteran. My father was Air Defense Artillery, and he spent most of his career at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. And one of his, I guess you call it short assignment, was in that distant land called New Mexico at White Sands Missile Range, also known as Wismar. And that's where I was born, was on the range. So I was born on the range. Trinity site type of guy. Anyway, so I grew up in a military family, did the military kid thing. My father PCS'd one time to Germany. We went on that trip with him, and it was a 4-year tour. Came back from that and did the usual thing, grew up. Then dad retired, high school ended. I had to go get a future. And I didn't plan really well, and I was too busy doing the silly things young men do. And I tried to join the Army, and the Army said, no bueno, you can't do it because you only have half a thumb. And so I couldn't go in. Well, a couple of years go by, going to school, this, that, and other. My mom really wants to get me out of their hair. And she found out that through some nepotism, that the problem was that the recruiter hadn't filled out the package correctly. And it was kind of funny because when I went to the MEP stations to be told I was not fit for service, they had me witness another young man's signature because he couldn't write. He was a big son of a buck. I'm 6'5". This guy was about 6'6". I'm sure he made Command Sergeant Major, but I witnessed his signature, but I got booted, right? Well, anyway, a couple years later, I finally got in, and the Air Force took me in, and all they had to do was, how kids will make a turkey with their hands for like Thanksgiving, they'll draw a line of their hand. That's all I had to include in the package, and I was in like Flynn. So in 1984, I went to the United States Air Force, Open General, didn't have a guaranteed job. I just had to get in because I had to get out of my own shadow, just not doing anything healthy. Got into the military, got in and was selected to be a Air Force weather observer. Went to observing school in Illinois, Chanute Air Force Base. From there, I went and served for 1 year at Dyess Air Force Base in Abilene, Texas. From there, I went overseas to Germany, and I got my first real good assignment. I was working for the 4th Brigade of the 1st Armored Division. And I did that for 2 tours. I did a consecutive overseas tour. And I signed out on orders to go back to, I don't know, in the Army, you might call it TRADOC, some training. I went back to the Air Force version of that to become a weather forecaster. And that morning, the Stars and Stripes came out with we got the warning ordered for Desert Storm 1. So I went off to school, the unit went downrange. Went off to school, the trade-off there was I ended up meeting my future wife, now my wife of 31 years.
Wow.
Yep. And so that was a more than equitable trade. I went from forecast school. I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico. From Albuquerque, New Mexico, back over to Germany. I went to Darmstadt, supporting the 32nd ADCOM. And then I went from there to K-Town to support the 21st TACOM. So I went from one, and I was in an OL, operation location, small unit, dedicated resource. And I went from being the only Air Force guy serving basically in Darmstadt to the only guy serving in K-Town for this great big Army unit. And from there, I went down and supported operations for and war planning in Grafenwehr, which was kind of an interesting story, but a Grafenwehr and all that for going into Bosnia. And I supported that whole kerfuffle. And from there, I ended up getting orders to our headquarters for Air Force Weather at Scott Air Force Base, from Scott Air Force Base to Offutt Air Force Base, and from Offutt Air Force Base to Fort Living Room. I retired there in Omaha, Nebraska area.
Wow, that's awesome. Hey, so let me ask you about New Mexico, White Sands. They do a Bataan Death March there every year.
Yes,
did you get to see that?
I've heard about it. I never participated. Remember, I was in the Air Force. I never participated in it, but I knew people personally because in El Paso, at least for a period of time, it was the largest concentration of Filipinos in the United States outside of either the coasts, right, from the West Coast and East Coast, particularly West Coast. And there were a number of people I was familiar with who were survivors of the Bataan Death March.
Yeah, they do it's a memorial, and it's a
ruck march. Yep.
It's a ruck march or ruck run. Some guys run it, and there's a civilian category and a military, and there's military light, military heavy, and civilian light, civilian heavy.
Yep.
And I was going to do it before I got injured. Now that I'm on Carnivore, I might go back and do that. I really want to because it's a marathon basically.
Right. I'd walk it, but I don't think I'd ever. Yeah. I don't even drive that far.
I think walking it would be pretty hard. Even it's in sand and everything, right? It's pretty tough. Cool. So that's pretty interesting. And I remember when I was at division headquarters, we actually had a tent with Air Force guys that did our weather and space. But it was kind of combined weather and space because it was for SATCOM, because we do everything in SATCOM and we need good weather. So that's kind of interesting. And those guys had it made, man. They had the best of everything. You know how it is, Air Force, Chair Force, you know.
Yep. I'm good. With it. You know, I remember.
Exactly. I'd be good with it too. All right, let's go ahead and talk about what were your reasons for actually trying Carnivore? Like, what had led you to this decision? Because it's pretty recent, right? When did you do it, and what were the reasons?
Well, it's multifactorial, like most things are. It's not normally just like one moment. And it was over time. About 3 years ago, I started getting really interested in doing something different because I got my first diagnosis of having fatty liver. So, you go to the Google University, and when you do that, you get a lot of Dr. Jason Fung, who did the diabetes code and the obesity code. So that got me thinking about intermittent fasting and low carb. That led me to Dr. Stephen Finney and Dom D'Agostino, and that got me more into heavy ketosis. And then after that, it was Dr. Barry and Sean Baker. Right. And so about 3 years ago, I did the first Sean Baker January challenge. Every January, he has a carnivore challenge. And I tried it, and it went for about 2 weeks, and it just really didn't mesh with family life and things of that nature, right? I had okay success, but didn't mesh. But I did pretty much with periods of going way off the reservation, so to speak, stayed fairly low carb. But this past summer, I really went into it because of all the silly things to have as my why. It was my belt buckle. When you have that carpenter's disease, when your chest is in your drawers.
Yeah.
And I always wonder why people who are blessed with adiposity, right, why they tuck their shirts in, because it seems to only make it look worse with that muffin top and everything.
Yeah.
Well, then I realized one day when I was tucking my shirt in, because it hurt with the belly going over the buckle.
Yeah.
At that point in time, I said, okay, now we're done. And that's what started. And then I think that was on July 19th. And I said, July 20th, I mean, I have the knowledge. I've seen the science, and I love the science.
Yeah.
But I finally was, okay, I can do this and I wanted to do an initial, and I spoke to my wife, and I wanted to make sure that I gave it 90 days of giving it the real go. Right. And she agreed with it. And I said, if after we had some off ramps, I built off ramps. If after a certain point in time, or if this or that happens, I'll off ramp. And the off ramp never came by. The old owl fart never showed up. And I went ahead and kept going. I think I'm on day 79 now.
Well, congrats. That's awesome. Yeah. And it gets easier. I'm sure you're experiencing this now. It does get easier as you build your skill of being a carnivore and get used to the new activities that you have that become your traits, become your habits.
Mhm.
And I find it gets easier. So I had the same kind of similar thing where when I decided to go, I decided I'm just going to go 100%.
Right.
And this thing's either going to work or it's going to fail, but it's not going to be because I didn't put effort in. It's going to be because it's a scam. And if it's not a scam, then it's going to work. And it worked. So it's not a scam. There you go. That was my logic. I was like, hey, I can always go out and buy groceries if it fails, right?
Right.
So I just burned the ships, did the Cortez thing, and went straight
Right.
forward. So that's awesome. Okay, cool. And then what were your initial experiences once in this 79-day period? Let's talk about like your first month or so. Like what kind of things did you go through and what did you experience?
Well, okay, so coming from a couple of years of pretty solid intermittent fasting and having done carnivore before and a ketogenic diet, I really didn't go through an adaptation phase. I didn't have the keto flu or anything like that. I didn't have, how should we be delicate here? I did not find myself overly engaged in the bathroom. All right. I'm also blessed with an exceptionally slow system. So I know some people that, if, particularly those who come off of, let's say, a more vegan based thing, they're always going. So now all of a sudden, now they're really going. That wasn't my issue. So I think actually for me, one of the big concerns was I thought I wasn't going enough. And
Yeah.
I realized that that's not the issue. The issue is, the what the metabolism is doing, what the digestive system is doing. It's perfect. Don't mess with it. And isn't it amazing that when we're ignorant of something, we just need to go mess with it, and it's okay. You don't have to fix it, right? But so initially, I really didn't have any problem. I think the biggest challenge is, okay, so some cramping, right? And
Mhm.
I have plenty of understanding how to make my own electrolytes. I can buy my own. I know about Element. I know about all those things. So I just had to make sure I was keeping up on my doses. That's why I use keto chows drops, because I can just put a squirt in a cup of water a couple times a day and I'm good to go. But I think my biggest challenge would probably be the social challenges. Not even myself knowing what to do. That's easy. Eat something that had a face or a mother. If it had a mother or a face, I'm good to go, right?
Right.
So I didn't have it, but just the social interactions and stuff like that, that got to be kind of the hill to die on.
Yeah, I find that I'm single, so I don't have quite the issues you have, but I still have to interact socially with my
Sure,
veteran buddies, or I go on dates, right? When I'm going on a date, it's kind of odd. So I
sure,
found that if I just plan in advance and like eat some burger patties before I step out the door, I'm good to go. And then I can just pick at stuff when I'm there because I'm not really hungry.
right?
So and I can choose to engage or not, depending on what's available, right?
Sure, sure,
At the
sure.
social setting. So I kind of like doing that. And that's something that's changed too. I think this diet for me, I don't know about you, but for me, it simplified many things such as grocery shopping. I mean, preparing of food, I don't do a menu anymore and figure out what I'm going to eat all week. I just
Right.
eat what I want when I want. And, it's changed a lot. My life has become not minimalist, but it's definitely streamlined. Even eating has become not an entertainment event, but it's just become a biological function that I do get out of the way so I can do something more interesting.
I find that to be very interesting, and I started to try to untie it in my mind. When we oftentimes will hear people in the community having what we might call in the military, I got to be careful here, a session, a complaining session, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
when they're doing that, people want to jump in and they want to throw their 2 cents. People like to get on the bandwagon and add to it. So they're running down the food industry and the farm industry and all those different things, right? But one that we'd never really thought about is this great big social conditioning of
Hmm.
meals. And
Hmm.
let's just spend 19 hours over the weekend making this meal from grinding the wheat and all. And the bottom line was, I think 300 years ago, I like to just use a nice number like 300 years ago. 300, 400 years ago, all that was necessary because you were working so hard to get it, to grow it. It didn't grow perfect. You had to deal with pests. You had to deal with weeds, all those things. So it was a lot of work. So it was like, since I have to do it, I might as well make a social, like laundry. Like when I was in the military and I was single, you got to do laundry. So I would go to the laundromat and I'd have a good time. I'd bring my stuff. I'd bring plenty of quarters for the jukebox. I'd bring books, and I made it a good time. Because if you're going to do it, have a good time doing it, right?
Yep.
Well, I think mealtime really got that way. So I wonder about what was necessary and what became a part of the, for lack of a better word, the propaganda of food.
Yeah, I have these dating apps like this Hinge one, and you wouldn't believe how many things, like they say, what should we do on a first date? And like, let's find a restaurant together, right? Or let's try a new cuisine.
Right.
It's like, that is entertainment, and that's like something they want to do. For me, I'd rather go on a hike or something, right? Or
Sure.
I don't know, something. But it's interesting. So many of those actually have that. It's very common. To try new food is something that most people like to do, or find a new restaurant or whatever. And it's like, it's all right around food. And I used to do that. I was right there, man. When I planned I used to take my son to Disney World every year, and we stay at the Shades of Green, which is a military resort. It's a great MWR resort, and that's military welfare recreation. So we'd go there, and I would plan out like the whole week of restaurants. In fact, I would book every night, so we'd know where we were going, and we'd plan on, we're gonna get a milkshake here, we're gonna get a burger here,
Right.
and we're gonna go next summer. And I think I just bring in the air fryer, and I'm just gonna buy a bunch of steaks and burgers and just do them in the room. And it's like, we're gonna save tons of money. That's so expensive at Disney World. And then on top of that, we're gonna have a lot more time, because gosh, you got to wait in line in those things. Even when you register, it's an event. It's hours. So,
it'd be interesting for you to catalog that, like on your phone, on your calendars. It said 8 dinner, done, right?
Yeah.
And think about it before, because if you're there for 4 nights, let's say you're there for how many days you think you'll be there?
We usually go 5. Yeah.
If you go 5 days, you have 3 meals a day and 2 hours a meal, right? That's 6 hours a day times 5, right? You got 30 hours. That's more than a whole 24-hour clock. So sitting around waiting to stuff something in your pie hole.
Right. And we could be in line getting on the next ride. We could be,
Or you could even be doing something else off park somewhere else, like going on an airboat ride to look at gators, or the biggest spitball, or something like that.
Find a museum. Right. Lots of stuff.
On your dating app, that would be the one thing I would do. I'd be like, look, we're going to meet at the Museum of Natural History, or this museum, because you're in Austin, right? Or near Austin.
Yeah. And there's a lot of museums here. There's a Bob Bullock. I'm a museum nerd. I drag my son everywhere to the museum. When we go somewhere on vacation, we're hitting a museum. That's the way it is.
That's what my dad. I mean, I got to go see the Gutenberg press, in Mainz, and then
that's awesome.
Then he took us to Italy one summer. He'd take you 30 days of leave, and we'd go somewhere. And we went to Italy, up and down Italy. So I've been up in the Leaning Tower of Pisa. You can't even do that anymore.
Wow.
What a memory to have.
All right. Next question. How has this way of eating affected your physical health in the last 80 days or 79 days? What have you noticed? What things have you seen?
Okay. Well, let's get the elephant out of the room. About 30 pounds is left.
Nice.
So 30 pounds is 30 pounds is 30 pounds. And that's been great. I've been noticing a lot of, I've read where you can't have spot losing, right? But I think where the body puts it on last is where it comes off first. So extremities, arms, shoulders, my back, my upper back, leaning out. And my belly, now that's still rocking good and strong. But behind me, I've got a barn door, right? So one day I decided, instead of doing the tape measuring, measuring yourself with a tape, you're going to cheat. I'm sorry. You can't help it. So what I did is I stood with my back in the doorway, and I closed the door down until it touched my belly. Then I reached up and I pulled a little pencil mark, like a great big caliper.
That works.
And, and matter of fact, Dr. Sean O'Mara said that's what you should do. He said you should sit down on the floor, get a couple blocks of wood, put a broom handle like you're doing the what do you call that? The dance where they go underneath it.
The mamba or no,
Mamba, lamba, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, you lay down and then you let it touch and then you mark it. And then next time you put it down and you mark it and you can kind of see how you're shrinking this way if you're laying down.
It's a limbo.
The limbo.
Yeah.
Instead of doing the compression, because if you're a fat guy like myself and you have very, this is important, if you have really weak core muscles, right?
Yeah.
You'll lay down, your fat just go, bleh, right? It doesn't mound up unless you're bloated. So I figured standing up the door give me that how you would say that frontal leverage, and that caliper, and I've moved the door about 1.5 inches in.
Wow.
And my back is swayed in good because I'm losing it. So I do that. I'd also say that a lot of inflammation has been reduced, other than like where I have osteoarthritis, like in this one little knuckle. I don't get it. Not tonight. Oh, that a little hurt, but generally speaking, not so bad. Also, I don't know how you measure this category, but confidence, physical confidence, as in I am working on a pavilion out back, and we're building the fireplace, so you got to go up and down and on the ladder. Well, for the last 10 years or more, going up and down the ladder was one step up, bring the other foot up. Next step up because of knee problems, right? So you're going one step at a time, slows you down. Well, now I'm going every other step, both up and down.
Yeah.
So confidence, less pain. And then I would say that this might be a little, I don't want to say it's TMI, but it's the truth, okay? So at one point in time in 2014, when I moved, I'm in Huntsville now, the Huntsville area. I moved down here, I went to the hospital, and I said to the doctor, something's not right. I don't know what's not right, but I think I got a hormonal issue. And it had to do with some of my disability, So I said, no, I would like you to check my hormones. So they ran a panel on my thyroid and for testosterone. And I did that. And then I got a call from them. I needed to come in right away. My testosterone was critically low. I said, what do we do? Well, we gave you the cream, right? I was okay, topical cream, I could do that. So I did that. Well, when you take externally applied medications, particularly hormones, whatever in your body is responsible for the production of it, your body is very smart. And my body said, oh, well, we don't need those anymore. And I was like, what? You know what I mean? And I mean, it's unnerving. So that went on for a couple of years. And finally, I was tired of it, and my wife did not like my aggressive driving and aggressive responses. I mean, my testosterone was up nice and high, but I've been more of a jerk. So we started thinking about this, that, and other, and I finally said about a year ago, I said, you know what? I'm going to just stop. So I stopped. Then things are getting better, I think. I don't know. And then I started this carnivore. Just had my hormones checked last week.
Yeah.
And I'm well above the minimum threshold.
Nice.
So
it came back.
And it's like a country western song played backwards. That's why I say carnivore is like a country western song played backwards. You get your life, your house, your dog, your truck. You get it all back.
I mean, after being on it for over 180 days, I can tell you, for me, it's like the hot tub time machine. I feel like I've been transported back to where I was, and where I didn't, I guess, like, even not just my body and stuff, but my whole mindset is back to where I was. When I was in my 30s, I was planning ahead. I was looking ahead for things. But when I was in my late 50s, like now, I had stopped doing that. I had just thought, well, I'm just going to ride this thing out, try not to die early, try not to get too sick, and just make it through and try to enjoy myself. And now it's like, I got plans, man. I want to go places. I want to see things. I want to meet people. So for me, it is like the hot tub time machine. I think it really is.
Well, I think there's a whole host, if you want to call it more of a global set of things in your body that involve not just physical, but the emotional and psychological. And we talk about that a lot in this space. And for us veterans, I
Mhm.
mean, if we just take PTSD from the stereotypical approach and we park that off to the side, right? But, as veterans, our circadian rhythm is totally jacked. And if you smoked cigarettes for a long time, if you drank a lot of coffee, and if you took vitamin Motrin all the time, right?
Yeah.
So now your liver is going to be jacked up, your kidney's going to be jacked up. You're going to have chemical dependencies from nicotine and all that, and from the caffeine. And oh, by the way, we're going to wake in the weather business now. This is a beautiful thing. We worked 3 days, 2 days off, 3 mids, 2 days off, 3 swings, 2 days off, 5 mids, 3 days off, 2 days, 5 swings, a day and a half off.
Mm.
I mean, it was all over. We never worked a steady shift. And the science has shown, like in career fields, like in aircraft mechanics, they'll change shift. They only do it 3 times a year. You work it for 4 straight months. And the science has shown that disruption in circadian rhythm for shift workers in that longer time frame has significant negative impacts on your total well-being. What do you think
Oh
it's
yeah.
like to do every 3 days?
Oh yeah. I started out on submarines,
Right,
and we have 3 6-hour shifts.
right,
If in case you can't figure that, that's not 24 hours. That
right.
means you rotate, and you wake up one day and it's dinner, and you wake up the next day and it's breakfast, and you wake up the next day it's lunch. And you talk about ruined circadian rhythm. I mean, I didn't sleep for years after that, I don't think, properly.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I get it. And then in the Army, of course, we had we had that too. We had things, it's just wherever in the military, you're going to get that. And I
That's
think on
right.
top of that, so that's been the case for hundreds of years in the military, where you're just not going to
Sure.
get good sleep. That's just the way it works. But I know our suicide rates among veterans, and not just deployed veterans, but even undeployed veterans, has gone up steadily since after Korea, Vietnam, and it's every year it keeps going up. And I think it kind of tracks with the introduction of the standard American diet, of the low fat standard American diet, and high sugar, high processed foods. And I think what's happening is, my theory now, no scientific evidence, but I think that there's always been this fulcrum of a tipping point where the same things cause people to commit suicide, which is relationship issues, money issues, legal issues, and substance abuse issues. They've always been the same. Those haven't changed. What I think is that it takes less of that to cause the tipping point now, because people's brains are in that brain fog of the standard American diet, and they're
Sure.
just not handling. I just know me, and this is, we're talking about mental health here, but for me, my mental health has cleared up so much, and I didn't even know I was really stressed out, and until it left. That's when I realized, wow, I was operating in a pretty bad place, and I've really drastically improved. And of course, my depression's gone away, which I used to have days that would be sunny, and I'd wake up and I just feel depressed. I didn't know why,
Right.
and that doesn't happen anymore. So I don't know about you, but what's your experience mentally on this diet?
So I think that's a tough bag for me to open up. I do have a rating for that. And for me, it's like, let me back up a bit. So I have a rating for sleep apnea. But
Right.
my sleep apnea is two-factored. So most people have obstructive sleep apnea, OSA,
Yep.
with neck, overweight, things of that nature.
Tongue. Yeah.
So that's where that, but I also have central sleep apnea, and it's attributable to, in theory, to TBIs, which I have. So
Okay.
I'm going to have those regardless of how I get thin. All right.
Right.
So if I think about that type of architecture in the brain, and we don't know, I know that Carrie over at Homestead How has coined a phrase, or Dr. Barry has coined a phrase, the proper human diet. We are becoming something that was just returning to what we should have been.
Right.
I don't think we have good information that says, well, what happened? How many years on a proper or better, let's use the word better, because I have been reminded This is a spectrum, and the same thing doesn't apply for everybody equally, right? So some
Right.
people will be fine in what they're doing. I am in an unhealthy metabolic state, so I'm doing something more radical to return to health. And I don't know how long I have to be in that quote unquote health zone before I can venture back out off the reservation, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to want to eat fruits and vegetables again because I actually kind of like them,
Yeah.
but I can't do it while it's detrimental to me. So going into the mental health realm, I don't think we have a body of evidence to suggest that TBI can be mitigated. So let's use that word, okay, to be careful. Mitigated. I just read something within the last month. I'm a huge proponent of stearic acid, C18. It's an acid that a long fatty chain that there are receptors on cells directly for stearic acid, and that when you eat it and you ingest it within 3 hours, your mitochondrial health improves dramatically. All right. So stearic acid's found in, well, beef and butter and a lot of the animal products. It's also found in cocoa butter, the highest concentrations in cocoa butter. Anyway, a guy by the name of Brad Marshall, he had the thing called the croissant diet about 3 years ago when I first started. And he goes way into the weeds, all the way down to the epigenetic thing about why stearic acid is beneficial. So when you think about it, cocoa butter is a big component of chocolate, and chocolate gives people a euphoric feeling. I think what happens is you eat chocolate, the sugar gets you going, right? But before the sugar crash comes, your mitochondria start really ramping up because of stearic acid, and that continues and leaves where the sugar left off. And I think in a non or pre 1960s diet, you'd have got a little bit of chocolate and a little bit of sugar and a whole bunch of meat and a whole bunch of fat, and you wouldn't have had the huge variations and dependencies, let's say, on sugar like we have. But
Right.
stearic acid is a tremendous thing. Well, they're using that now in the studies I've read for treating Parkinson's disease and treating Alzheimer's.
Hmm.
It's an amazing thing because we've learned from the ketogenic discoveries, not discoveries, but rediscoveries.
Rediscovery. Yes.
We
Yes.
noticed, and they are using that for treating lots of brain disorders because the ketones cross that blood-brain barrier.
Yeah.
Well, now they're saying maybe we should add this stearic acid too. So I actually have pure stearic acid. I bought food grade. I can add to my food. I can tell you it will, for me, it has increased my energy long term. I can't have any of it added to my food after lunch because I'm not going to bed till 3 o'clock in the morning then.
Really? I might have to try that out. You might have to send me a link to that.
Sure.
Can you get it on Amazon or?
Yeah, that's right. I bought a bag of it off of Amazon. Cost me $1.280 for it's like 2 pounds, and it comes in a granulated thing. Now I will tell you, when you put it on your food, it's a very waxy substance, right?
Yeah.
So you'll really notice it. So just a little bit, and you'll until you get it and tolerate it. But man, I'm telling you what, my mitochondria are going. It's a party.
So I wonder if the cocoa butter has lower or no oxalates that you get with the cocoa powder or the cocoa, right? Because that's what I worry about with the cocoa is oxalates. If I could get rid of that and get the benefit, which is the acid, I assume is what everyone thinks is healthy, then that I'd be all for that. Is that what you think
I
it is? Or?
take the cocoa butter and shave it off and put it in my coffee. It smells just like chocolate. Tastes a lot like chocolate, but it's pure.
Do you know about the oxalates on it?
I have not looked at it, but I'm trying to think.
Check that out.
I think oxalates are more associated with the photosynthesis and all that stuff a plant does. But cocoa butter is one of the only plants with fat, other like maybe avocado and olives.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
You should check out, if you haven't watched it, Anthony Chafee, Dr. Chafee, interviewed Chris Palmer, Dr. Chris Palmer. And Chris Palmer is a psychiatrist, I believe, that treats schizophrenics and treats bipolar disorder and all kinds of bad disorders, like really bad. And he accidentally stumbled into this ketogenic diet. Now, he's not a carnivore, but he's very ketogenic and has reversed schizophrenia, which is unheard of in the medical community. well, in the modern medical community, because back in the 20s, it wasn't unheard of. It's unheard of now. They've rediscovered the secret, I think. And yeah, so if anyone watching this knows anybody or has schizophrenia or a bipolar disorder or some other mental illness, you should definitely check that video out and ask your doctor about it, or look into these other alternative methods, because I think there's merit to them for sure.
Well, I think there's a Dr. Light, a lady, and she does a lot with, she's a psychiatrist, I believe, also. And
Is she
does a
British?
lot- What?
Is she British? Because I saw a British one. I forget her name though.
Don't think, but I think it's
Okay.
Light. But, 120 years ago plus, a ketogenic diet, and I mean highly ketogenic, like 90% fat for your calories, was what they used for untreatable adolescent epilepsy.
Yep, exactly. And still is now. They can do that. That's what yeah, it is the thing to do. Yeah. For seizures. Yeah. It treats like, it's like 70% success rate. There's no medicine in the world that has that success rate.
Right. But it is very difficult to have variety and to maintain that high level of fat in your diet. But you're talking about, then they're eating the thalamus, the brain, they're eating everything they can, and you got to keep that protein down because you don't want the carbohydrates through that neoglucogenesis.
Yes, right.
Very difficult. But I think it has to be, I'm always amazed, Larry, by the fact that our bodies make cholesterol.
Yeah,
Our brains are about 65% cholesterol.
right.
We store cholesterol. What's wrong with it again?
Yeah. Well, it shows up when there's a problem, and that's what's wrong. So there's inflammation. Cholesterol shows up like firemen, right? To start fighting it. And it's like blaming the firemen for starting the fire. I've seen that discussed before, and other doctors have brought up, and I agree with it. So it's there, and it has a function.
See, a lot of people don't realize, if you're in a house, like you lived in base housing before, right?
Yeah.
If you tear up the walls right before you PCS, you're cleaning everything, you're getting the toothpaste or the spackling out, and what do? You fix all the nail holes, right?
Yep.
So when your body, when the arteries or veins or anywhere else have a tear, we scab up on the external side, right? But on the internal side, the body comes by with a bunch of cholesterol and calcium and makes its own spackling to fill the wound, to heal the wound. And most people don't even know that most of the dietary fat you eat enters your body through your lymphatic system.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're very confused and very ignorant, and we have allowed ourselves to be led by a ring through our nose instead of saying, hold on. Like you were saying with the mental health question, right? Why are people so impacted by the same thing we've always faced? Well, the thing is we aren't the same in the situation. If you think about it, what is that definition of insanity? If you do the same thing expecting different results, well, the thing is, we are what's different, not the condition.
Right. The food myth, and the food myths were actually started and propagated by these food industries, sugar industry, Ansel Keys, these guys. I mean, because you basically, you got a guy, Ansel Keys, who says, oh, high fat like butter is going to cause heart attacks. Well, it didn't cause heart attacks from 1900 to 1920 when they ate butter predominantly in their meals. There was no heart attacks. And now it's a huge amount. So obviously, it's pretty obvious to any casual observer that actually cares to look at history. And the problem is people don't. They just want the expert to tell them, okay, science, I am the science. Tell me, Mr. Science, what should I eat? And then they want to take that and say, okay, the science says this, I should eat this. Unfortunately, the science is corrupted by dollars.
So my understanding was Senator McGovern,
right?
He chaired the committee, and he famously quoted, "said we don't have the time to wait."
Yes.
All right. But the other thing is, and I have been wrestling with this in my mind, and that is our society and I'm trying not to dog our society. I'm just looking at the absolute value of it, right? we have so much coming at us nowadays that we really have become, our IFF, identify friend or foe, is on all the time, and we want instant answers. We call it instant gratification, but I think that's an oversimplification again, right?
Yeah.
We want the simplified stuff because we have so much we are attempting to do, and we're trying to keep all these things going. So we do surrender decisions to other people because that frees us up. Like you not going out to restaurants is going to free you and your son up. So I believe that there is a social normalization that has led to this, not just propaganda. The demands have created this for us. And we have succumbed and surrendered, and other people have taken advantage of it. That's what I'm getting to, right?
Yeah, they took advantage. They saw the opening. And who's to blame? Their businesses. That's what their bottom line is, their business, right? But so, yeah, it's give me convenience or give me death now is what people are very into convenient driven, right? I mean,
convenience would be give me the information and be it someone of authority, right? So even now, after the pandemic, people are coming back on, we were lied to.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, anybody who's been through NBC training.
Yes. Right? I was an NBC NCO.
Right.
Gas.
Yeah. Anybody been through the train? And, in the Air Force, we didn't really go through the gas chamber. They gave us banana oil, right? Okay. But
yeah,
I would smell banana oil through a face mask, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well,
you get through a cloth mask, right? So why? Anyway, I don't want to go there too far. I don't want to go too hard. This is not the forum for it. But we have surrendered a lot, and now the question for all of us is, how are we going to bring it back, but not bring? Sometimes when you're doing tug of war with a kid, they'll pull, then you let go. And they pull so hard, then they fall down. Let's not fall down.
Yeah.
Let's be measured and pace ourselves, because I think there are a lot of people who are in the middle of all this discussion. Maybe they know they have a problem. Maybe they're looking for a method, a process. But what they don't want to do is have dogma. They don't want to be belittled. Right. Do like you said, look, be the change.
Yeah.
Have them come ask you, Larry, Scotty, I've known you for a long time. What are you doing? Well, and at that point in time, we need to be careful. We say, kind of doing an elimination thing. Yeah. Don't throw out the buzzword bingo that can make me polarize in one way or the other. I've just been watching what I'm doing. Oh, really? What's that? Well, try this a little bit, and give it to them a little at a time, so they don't go running. Carrie's wife went into it headlong and ended with such a bad keto flu. She's like, I'm done. Now it's reintegrating. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of people do that the first time.
Sure.
I decided I was just going to suck it up and drive on, but that's just me, and I'm not going to judge anyone that doesn't want to do that.
Yeah, Band-Aid ripper or Band-Aid peeler.
Yeah, I'd rip it off, and I knew the reason I had to rip it off, and I knew the other wasn't the option, was because I know my habits and my tendencies. So I've done keto before and fell off every time, and I knew that if I didn't remove carbs completely, I would fail one night. I would go out and get ice cream or something. And I just knew that. So I like, you know what? I have to do it this way for me. Some people are going to be like that. Some people are.
I use one artificial sweetener. I use the worst of the worst of the worst, but it's what I like. It was the first one, right? And I get it in little pills and I throw it in my coffee and it's enough. And I've come to the decision that if this one thing will keep me from the 99,
right,
I'm going to do it. And it has.
Yep.
Versus fighting against it all the time. So I like saccharin. It works for me, right? Is it good for me? Probably not. Yeah. But I'll go over that hill when my belly doesn't go over my belt.
Yeah. Yeah, you can always refine down the road, right? And that's what I've done too. I look at the first guy I interviewed for Mission Carnivore, George Goodenough. He was a UK desert rat in Desert Storm. He's our age. He reversed type 2 diabetes and lost a huge amount of weight, 30 or 40, 45 pounds, something. And just I mean, he's a new man, and
Sure.
who am I to tell him he's doing it wrong when he eats a couple things that are not pure carnivore, like meatballs that have some whey in them, or whatever. They have things that a little soy or something. It's like, hey, if that's what's keeping you diabetes free and amazing your doctors, it's not my position to tell you that's not the way to go. Is it the most optimum way to go? No, it's not. That's best practices to stay to meat. But is it working? Yes. So drive on.
I read in my study, so I had to have some surgery right after I got out of service for thoracic outlet syndrome. And basically, they took the muscles out of the side of my neck. They cut me from here to here, opened me up, pulled me out, filleted me, rewired me, replumbed me, put me back together. And in the process of learning about all this, I have found out anatomy and physiology is kind of a hobby. You know, if you open up 10 people and look inside, 10 males, our age, blah, 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 all the pieces and parts will look different. It's just a normalized thing where you have so many ribs and you have so many this, and this is where you kind of find them. That's why when doctors open you up to kind of look, I have an extra artery that just goes to nowhere. It's a bridge to nowhere. Just an extra artery. So when we say something's optimal, that's under a bell curve, right, with normal distribution. But for a person in the right genetic situation, it actually may be better, because isn't it? Oh, our fruit-loving
Dr. Saladino.
Dr. Saladino, he talks about the need for an insulin spike for your kidneys to work, right? Well, I don't disagree with him. He's much more learned than I am, but he's also in serious shape, right? So everything doesn't always apply the same. And being a weather guy, having to know about atmospheric dynamics and all the factors, right? I'm used to sitting there saying, well, you can kind of get there, and you have a complete different makeup of things, right? So that's how
it's like a model, right? It's like a weather model. Like different models will predict different things, but they're all kind of right. Like where the hurricane's going to come, and I mean, I see that.
They all have their biases. You have to know the bias of it. Just like if you're an IT guy who does communications, you're going to know which protocols will work under what. Are you pushing a lot of big data? Are you pushing a lot of granular data? How quick do you need your data? All those different things. You might pick a different tool based on the environment you're in. Well, I think that's true across a broad spectrum of everything we do in our lives. But we like to simplify it, and we'll say, the guy looks like a jerk, I don't like him. He might be the nicest guy you've ever met, right? Or you might be on a dating app, and someone might be the best person for you, but you already categorized them friend or foe.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
IFF. Yeah, it is. Okay, so how do you stay motivated? Don't you find this diet really boring? And how do you stay motivated to stay on it? Okay, good.
It's for me, and if you've been in any one of my streams, and I normally do them like Monday through Thursday, ad hoc. I'm really big on non-scale victories. So I stay on the diet because I have daily things where I see a win. So that reinforces the behavior daily. I stay on the diet because I am about as exciting as watching paint dry as a person. All right. I mean, it's not that I don't have my interests, but my interests can be satiated quickly and easily. I'm easily amused.
So tell me about your stream, because a lot of people won't know about this unless you kind of expand on that. You are a YouTuber. Yeah. And tell me your YouTube handle, and then tell me about your streams that you do.
Okay, so
what they're about.
Sure. I'm Carnivore Scott because, again, I'm kind of boring. Carnivore Scott, all one word. And I do a stream, do a live show. Like I said, I try to do it Monday through Thursdays, roughly 8:30 to 9 o'clock on Central Time. I try not to step on too many other lives, but with the growing community, that's more and more difficult. And what I do, I just open it up and people show up and we just start talking. I throw the link out into the chat. And if people want to join, they join in. And sometimes I have 3 or 4 people in with me. Sometimes it'll just be me. but it's an opportunity for like-minded people to get together, to share topics of the day. And I've been blessed. There's a carnivore, Limitless Lindy, and she from Australia. She kind of like the female version of Bill from Alaska. She was
Ah.
about 700 pounds.
Oh, I know Limitless Lindy. Yes, I've seen her videos. Yes, I know who that is.
Well, she came into my stream one time. She said, I'm going to try it. It's a safe place to come in because it's not, I'm not a huge, I don't have 1,000 people. I'm not monetized. It's just a place you can come in and you can try the technology and integrate without feeling like you're going to get attacked or the chat's going so fast you can't keep up or anything like that. Sometimes, like I said, there'll be 8, 9 people in there and we'll spend 2 hours and we'll go back and forth. We'll cover a lot of topics, but it's just a place to be friendly.
Yep, and I've been there before. I've participated a couple of times and really enjoyed my time there. And I might even be going after we're done here. So if you're going to be on, I don't know if you are, but I might be jumping in just to say hi to everybody because I really enjoy it because it is a free form format. It's not like a structured format where you can just get on and talk. I do a live stream as well on Wednesday nights, the Hump Day Meetup. Although that one I kind of do run as a structured Q&A for new people, and I propose, and I usually have guests come up and I talk about things that I have topics. I think the last topic we had was Halloween candy and how we can not give candy out, right? Which is really good. And we had a great discussion on that. Okay. So we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to give you the floor for the last part here. I want to know, would you recommend the carnivore diet to other military veterans or first responders? And that includes active duty. And if so, what advice would you give them?
Okay. Yes, I would recommend it. I would recommend to keep it short. I'd recommend you do some form of a ketogenic diet first for 30 days to get your body in a better condition. It's like, before you went to basic training, you did some exercises, right? Hopefully. Before you went off to any special school, you did some exercises because, when you get to the school, you don't want to be the guy sucking wind or the gal sucking wind. You want to be able to stay up with the class. So do a ketogenic type thing. Look, we're all adults here. Eliminate the crap. You don't need to be educated what that is, okay? So if it had a cellophane wrapper, came in a box made by Hostess, you know what I'm saying? Get those things. Get the soda down. Eliminate the alcohol. That's a no-go. You can't have 2 masters, and it'd be best if you did that for so many reasons. We can't count them. And then I'd go into the diet and I would sit there and say, find products that agree with you. If you like sausages, great. Kaneka sausages, Polish sausages, hot dogs, all that's going to be better than carrots or broccoli. Okay. Get yourself some eggs. Find out where you are on the dairy spectrum. Like, I'm okay with dairy. Dairy doesn't tear me up. Dairy doesn't bother me. But I do notice that too much cheese and too much heavy cream, which I love my heavy cream, slows me down. So learn those things for yourself. The other thing I would do, journal, and then journal some more. And use your phone. Use your calendar on your phone to track everything because you will not remember everything you do. All right. So and in the first couple of weeks, don't trust your body to tell you the truth. Okay.
How about this? I think also to add to that list that you should start your education too and start working on your bachelor's of science in carnivore diet. If you're going to go that direction, or at least ketovore or keto, start watching experts. And I would say daily, not just for knowledge, but for motivation. That's a huge, huge deal because you're really making a big change. And it's really motivational to see other people's success stories, to find out how it's affecting your body. That's how I learned. Like when I did keto every time, I was still doing salads with salad dressing that's full of seed oils. I had no idea that was bad for me. I thought it was good. And I was getting the high-end stuff, Ken's salad dressing, like the good stuff. And I thought, well, this is the healthy salad dressing. Now that I know, I look at its first ingredient, seed oils. It's canola oil or something. It's like, that's the worst thing you can put in your body. And
Right.
So this is an educational process.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that ketovore, going to keto, or on your way, make that part of your transition. Start learning about the skill and art of being a carnivore, and find out how things affect your body. Because I had no clue, and I'm sure you were the same way, Scott. When you started, you probably didn't know everything that was so bad. I didn't know about the seed oils until after I became carnivore. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it as a keto person, I don't think. And the sweeteners for me, I mean, like I was eating Quest bars, and they're keto, but they're terrible. And they were making me, I was addicted to Quest bars. And every night at 6 p.m., I would have the worst surge of cravings for something sweet or something to eat. And now that I've been away from all that, I don't ever have cravings at 6 p.m. anymore. I just don't.
Yeah, no cravings,
Can't explain it.
no hanger pains, right?
Right.
But I would give you a caveat here. There's no good military briefing without a caveat or a go back.
Alibi. We call them alibis in the Army.
Yeah. Oh, I've done plenty of alibis.
Yeah.
And that would be, I don't know that I would broadcast to your friends and family what you're doing.
Right.
I think your friends and family have a genuine interest in your well-being, but are also victims to that instification. And they've heard big pharma and they've heard big food say, you got to have 6 meals a day. You got to have 32 servings of Cheerios or whatever it is, right? Don't go pee into the wind,
Right.
Hold it into yourself, take it on yourself. People start to ask you questions, like Larry said, like I said, you say, I'm just holding off on that for a little bit. It's been kind of tearing me up a little bit. I had a little gas, right? And that's very true. And people, yeah, you have been kind of funky, right? So, or hey, I'm working on this because it's been changing, it's been messing with my head. People are cool. You do what you got to do, right? And if you have to tell someone, you say, well, I'm going with a little bit in that keto thing. If you push your food aside and they never know any better, look, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, I like to tell people, if I don't want to go into the carnivore store, I say I'm on an elimination diet.
Right.
And I'm under the advisement of some doctors, which you are, because there's doctors online telling you to do this. So you're under advisement of doctors to do an elimination diet to find out what's affecting your body. So that's an easy way to say it without, because carnivore kind of sounds like, I'm just going to eat this raw, dino bone. Yeah. I'm a caveman, right?
Right.
I don't know. It just seems kind of extreme sounding, but okay. So so military veterans and first responders, great. And that was great advice, Scott. Well, Scott, it's been a quick hour, man. I tell you what, I am so glad we got to sit down and talk. Thank you for being on Mission Carnivore and sharing your experience. And stick around for a minute. I'm going to drop you out and I'm going to end the video, and we'll chat for a minute before you head out. Okay. All right. Okay, guys. So all I got to say is stay strong and overcome. Carnivore Soldier out.